Well, hello everybody. Welcome back to Heads Up Hockey. This is Jersey Joe once again. Thank you for following the podcast on YouTube, Anchor.fm, Spreaker, and so many others. And we are really in the final stretch of the NHL season for your New Jersey Devils and NHL as well. So, with that being said, the Devils have a home game coming up tomorrow. By the time this podcast is up, you probably watched already. So this is going to be against the Pittsburgh Penguins, who are looking to keep themselves alive in the wild card race. So I want to really talk a little bit more about that, where you have Pittsburgh looking to sustain that lead. And per moneypuck.com, these are the point bet odds and a few other things going in, just in case if you're one of those people, you want to use a non-sports betting app that just uses tokens and not actual money. It's a fun app that I use because it's not money. It's just prizes when you can redeem the Viget tokens. So, anyways, this is a huge game for the Penguins. I agree with this. Um, Now, if for some reason they beat the Devils in regulation, their odds increase 17.4% to a high of 78% chance. If they lose to the Devils, which I hope the Devils win in regulation, you decrease their odds for the Penguins down by 13.1%. So really, this is a do or die situation for the Penguins, and they're starting to near that end of that cycle where they say, "Can we keep, winning and win enough to sustain a playoff spot?" And that window, like I said before on other hockey podcasts, like the Bottom Line podcast with Jimmy Finizzi and Neil Villapiano, that window begins to close. And that means you're going to either have to retool or rebuild. So, that being said, if the Devils beat, if the Penguins beat the Devils in overtime, that 1 point increases the Penguins' odds of winning that wild card spot by a net positive of 16.8% to 77.4%. If they lose to the Devils in overtime like they did in the past, they go up to 0.7%. So that's pretty slim. That's very moderate. That's less than what, 1.0. So, anyways, I'm trying to sound too mathematic. That's 0.7% of what of 100. So really, I'm not that fond of math, but anyways, just a little bit of numbers. And it also says if the Penguins were to make the second round, their odds of making it would be 25.3%. If they lose to the Devils in regulation, trying to make the second round, that's decreased to 15.5 from 4% downward. So that would go down from 19.5. And if they beat the Devils in OT, it goes up 4.7, but 18.7 if they lose to the Devils in overtime. But their odds to make the finals is 4.3%. Their odds to win the cup is really between 2.5% and 4.3%. And their odds to win the cup is between 1.1 and 2%. So really, their wild card odds at wild card one spot range between 16.3 and 48.1. And it's a really easy breakdown. And wild card two, it goes between 29.7 and 33.4. So they're not going to be looking at the draft lottery. So this is a important seeding because it depends on who they will have a finalized spot against. Like we already know Tampa Bay and Toronto are already set in stone. So this is just one of those games that is what I like to call the filtering seeding game. So to me, like the Devils already punched their ticket. They're just waiting to find who their opponent will be. That's what we're really looking for going forward. So goalies. I love talking about goalies when it comes to Money Puck. It's a fun situation. I talked about before about when the Devils were playing against Minnesota. Uh, I said it was going to be a goalie duel, and it wasn't going to be easy. And Gustafsson got the best in overtime because Matt Boldy scored that with less than 2 seconds left in the game. But let's see, with a minimum of 10. All right, all set. But anyways, one of the best goaltenders for Pittsburgh is Casey DeSmith, and the next guy who's close to that is Vitek Vanacek. And if it weren't for the Devils sending Schmid back down because of the cap and having Blackwood back, they would have had Schmid being the best goaltender on the Devils and one of the best goalies with a minimum of 16, 17 games, and has actually been lights out uh, since last year. Underperformed a lot, but has been going above and beyond. And it goes to show you what one full season can do for a young goaltender's development. But I really think that the Devils have a really good chance at putting away the Pittsburgh Penguins, the middle of the second and third period. But they need to, like I said before, the Devils themselves need to come out on top first, because going into the playoffs, you got to be the first one to score. Because I remember there was a crazy stat, like the Devils were like 10-2 or something when they score first, and I was like, that's a very good stat. And that's when they had the Eliash, Kovalchuk, Ponikarovsky, Zubras forward core. And if the Devils could just shoot like they did against the Rangers before, against the Penguins in the regular season, and do the same thing against whoever they face in the first round, Devils will be fine. It's just they're trying to increase their odds of winning. But those past 3 games that they played within 96 hours, winning 2 of the 3 is pretty good, because you won 4 out of 6 points possible. So I'm not going to be upset about it. And yes, it was a stinker of a game when they played in Winnipeg and they had 23 hours between the past 2 games, between Chicago and playing in Winnipeg. And for me, if I was doing the NHL schedule, I would have given them, the Devils and other teams, minimum of 24 hours plus. So that's something I think Marty Walsh, the new NHLPA labor secretary, should look into going forward with the new NHL schedule, besides looking into bringing back uh, the World Cup of Hockey with or without Russia and Belarus. So I know that's a little off topic from this episode, but that'll be a different one down the road. So, anyways, uh, Buffalo will be a team next week that's going to be even hungrier to get into the playoffs. And I just think that um, this is a good week or last couple of weeks, especially going up against Boston in Boston, for the Devils to face off teams that are bloodthirsty. And this is only going to help rather than hurt the Devils going into the first round of the playoffs. And you need to have that tough atmosphere, because you need to get set up for who your next opponent is going to be in the first round. And yes, tickets are over $220 at the first couple of games for Prudential Center in the playoffs, from what I've seen on TickPick, which, by the way, doesn't sponsor this podcast. And there aren't any sponsors for this podcast. But if you are, then you can reach out to me at JerseyJoe11_NJ. But back to the Devils. They control their fate going forward. If they just keep winning 2 out of every 3 games, they will be fine. They will have 4 out of 6 points going forward, and I wouldn't be upset at all. I mean, look, this team was what, 0.384 win percentage last year, and this team is like 68% winning percentage. That's near double the productivity that they did before last year. And yes, they were scoring a little less than 3 goals on average last year, but they were able to give up close to 3 to 4 goals last year. This year, just the opposite. They've been scoring more and letting in less. So that's something I saw on one of the Devils Facebook groups, and to me, it shows a testament to what this team has done within a year. And I really believe that with Tom Fitzgerald running the show, he signed Josh Philman to an entry-level contract, an amateur tryout, to play for the Utica Comets, being able to score along with a prospect in Nolan Foote, who will eventually get to the New Jersey Devils. I think, this is my personal belief, Miles Wood does not make it. Michael McLeod is not a goal scorer. He's a assists guy and he's a face-off wizard. But there are more people that can outproduce Michael McLeod. And I would rather see guys like a Nolan Foote or a Graham Clark and a Jesper Boqvist going forward. Boqvist actually has been more creative with the puck as a power forward than as a dangler. And for those you don't know, danglers are forwards who hold on to the puck a lot longer. They're very, very creative. They don't shoot right away, but when they do, they like to get in those nitty gritty areas around the net and they want to do what Pavel Datsyuk does, which is roll the wrists, cradle it, lob it in, or just out deke the guy in his goal crease and just flick it in and make it look easy. And to me, if I see potential in Jesper Boqvist, he's going to be a second, third line dangler who can really become an electric, creative slash finisher. But he's more so a energy complementary piece. And I do agree with my buddy Billy Botch about that from the Trap podcast. And I've been high on Jesper Boqvist for a couple of years since his draft year. And it's only a matter of time when he starts taking off and exploding next season, playing in more games. And him playing with Bratt and being on that same roster is only going to help him. If there isn't any more room for him to grow on the Devils, he would be a good trade piece for the Devils to get someone maybe a little bit more physical, and maybe they get a Zachary Leroux type player who's some Brad Marchand type, and the Devils do need someone who will kick Brady Tkachuk and Matthew Tkachuk around when they try and get tough on the Devils players' skin. Yes, they do have Curtis Lazar, but he is out right now, and hopefully the Devils get him back for the playoffs, because this is the kind of hockey that we need, and we need that heart and soul guy. But the Devils making that statement win versus the Rangers goes to show that the Devils know the sense of urgency that they can deal with the Rangers trying to outplay them in their own zone, but expose the Rangers in the neutral zone and take advantage of them in their zone on the defensive end. And the only reason why the Devils didn't score more is because Igor Shesterkin was just out goalieing himself and just trying to be the best player on the whole entire ice. And if this is the way that the Devils and the Rangers play, Shesterkin's going to have to be perfect in net. I am not fond of Mackenzie Blackwood in net. Between him being rusty, I just can't see him being a guy in the playoffs in the net with Vanacek getting more responsibilities. Currently, I rather have Schmid because he's young, he's more technical, he's more composed than Blackwood. And Blackwood to me is, I keep saying this over and over, but he's Jekyll and Hyde. One day he's Dr. Jekyll, one game he's Mr. Hyde. So you do not want someone who has too many good games and too many bad games. You need more consistency. And the era with Blackwood and net is going to come to a close. And also, I mean, his time has come and gone. It's just a matter of when. And that's how I'm going to leave it at that. And I just see that the Devils, they're going to improve their situation at the draft. Rounds 2 through 7, between there, they'll make their picks and they'll find their gems, just like they did with Josh Philman. And one of the things I like about Philman is that he plays a lot more similar game to Blake Coleman, but a little bit more firepower and creativity. Nothing against Mr. Coleman, but if you can find a gem like that later in the draft, you will be stockpiling more really good players who will jump in and be cheaper contracts down the road when you do have to move a few pieces who do not fit you near or long term. And that's a good problem to have. And asset management is the key. Plus, when I talk about the playoffs, this gives the Devils a longer window than what the Rangers have now. The Rangers have probably like one or two more tries at it, and they're going to have to try and do it. And, as someone who watches the Metro, the most underrated, scary team that I would keep my eye out for would be the New York Islanders because they play the trap game, they play heavy and physical, but when they don't play to that system and their goaltending that's very good, but they don't get any coverage and they get burnt, they could be out in 6 games or 7. So I'd be extra careful. Winnipeg, to me, will haunt some teams in the West rather. Well, a long time ago when they were in Atlanta, they relocated to Winnipeg. They were part of the East, but yeah, that's just how old I am. But Winnipeg will be my wild card Western team that's going to scare some teams. But you have to take it with a grain of salt, where the regular season means nothing once you get to the first round. And it's a smaller iced game. And I don't mean dimensions. I mean players playing within the face-off circle and just playing near the bumper and the slot and behind the net and along the boards. So there's going to be boom, boom, ping pong, in, funny bounce. You're not going to like it. I may not like it. Some other fan might like it. But there's going to be some funny things that go along the way. But I mean, for those of you who are listening, who are from Europe, Asia, wherever in the world, USA, Canada, please send in your responses here on YouTube, Twitter, Instagram at Joe of Jersey _ Joe of Jersey. And you can find me on any podcatcher possible and say hi to me at a Devils game or even just on YouTube here at Heads Up Hockey Podcast. So thank you for your support. Hit the thumbs up button. Give me a big high rating, 5-star rating if you like what you hear from the podcast. And this has been a really good day. Thank you so much, and let's go Devils.